Welcome, everybody, to the Dealing with Yourself podcast. I am your host, Danny Till, Dannyt, silent Hill. This is episode number 8. Numero ocho. Wait, is it ocho? Dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete, ocho. Alright, yeah, so it is number 8. Okay. This is going to be an interesting episode because this is going to be an episode where I am entirely dedicating it to one specific documentary that I saw last night. And for those who have HBO, I consider it to be very important recommendation of viewing. It's 95 minutes. It is very impactful to anybody who watches it, but especially hit me because this is a subject matter that I maybe would have been a part of if I had gone into the business when I was 3 or 4. 3.5, 4 years old is when I knew what I wanted to do. It was just, I remember, like, when I was a little kid, I was around 4 years old when I saw E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the first time. And you know the shot where it's Elliot and E.T. in front of the moon? That is the moment, that shot right there, the Amblin logo, that shot is the reason I knew what I wanted to do. Okay. And this documentary is called Showbiz Kids. Like I said, it's on HBO. It is 95 minutes, and it's interviews from a handful of child actors. It is people that are very well known. It's directed by Alex Winter, who, if you may be wondering, who is that? Well, it is Bill from Bill and Ted. And it is an incredible documentary. It's heartbreaking, it's sad, and it makes you put yourself in perspective. And again, I think, what if I had been successful off the bat, and when I got into this business, like if I had gone to the business when I was 3 and I became well known, I probably would have been the people that are being interviewed in this documentary. Like, it's the people who are being interviewed are Evan Rachel Wood, Milla Jovovich, the late great Cameron Boyce, Wil Wheaton, Henry Thomas, Jada Pinkett Smith, Mara Wilson, Todd Bridges. There's a woman who she was known in the industry as Baby Peggy. And in addition, you follow 2 child actors, one of whom lives in New York. She is a Broadway theater actor, and her whole plot line is, hey, I want to go to summer camp. This may be the first free summer, and I can go to sleepaway camp because all her friends were going. And this other kid who is on his second outing to Los Angeles from Florida for pilot season, and he's with his mom. And you tackle and you follow his journey throughout this pilot season. And I feel like the main thing to come across in this documentary is the main message: just be a kid. Be a kid. That is the main thing they're trying to just make known. And again, I feel like there are child star. There's and again, this shows how committed they are, and how, for example, there are 2 types of actors in this world. And there are those like me who truly do want to work in this business. Then there are those who start when they were a kid because their parents make them start. Now, this little kid, his name is Marc Slater. He's 8 years old, right? He tells his parents, I want to do this. 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 And his mom and his dad agree, and his mom goes out there with him. And they talk about how they are using a chunk of their savings to live out there to let him go on auditions. And there's one specific scene where he's with an acting coach, right? And he's sitting there, and they're going over a script, and they're going over dialogue and directions and direction that's in the script. And he's sitting in the chair, and he's yawning. And when this lady is telling him, if you really do feel like this is not for you, tell your mom and tell your dad and say, hey, this is not my cup of tea. While he's saying that, his leg is jiggling, and the way he's moving his hand on his leg, it shows me in the back of my head, the back of his mind is probably telling him, I don't want to do this. And you know what? Good. Because my thing is just, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. While he wasn't interviewed, Joseph Gordon-Levitt said something a few years back. Because I believe Joseph Gordon-Levitt is 38, if not 39 years old. And he's been in the business since he was 6, because he started doing plays, and then I think somebody saw him at a play and said, hey, he's talented, you should sign him up for an agency. And he was on, I believe, Kelly Ripa's show, and he was saying how the reason why he's still going is because his parents gave him the option, because she's one day I think he didn't want to go to an audition, and he told his mom, I don't want to go to the audition today, I just don't want to go. And his mom said, you don't have to. You can literally stop wherever you want. You can just stop doing this and truly be a kid. I feel when your parent gives you the option of, hey, you can call quits on your own. We're not going to force you, but when you say I'm done, then we're done. That is the truly good parent. Instead of really a lot of these child stars, especially in the 80s, who just put their kids in the business, and a lot of them say, "Oh, it's my." And this is one of the examples. Wil Wheaton. Wil Wheaton is in the business because of his mother. His mother had been in the business, and that's how he got in. And he started auditioning for commercials. And Wil was on a brownie commercial, and his whole action is he takes a bite of the brownie and he says some dialogue, right? Well, apparently he took a bite and he's saying the lines, but the director of the commercial got pissed because he had a piece of brownie stuck in his teeth. All right? But again, like when you eat a brownie, you get some shit in your teeth. That's just how it happens. But anyway, so after that moment, from what I understand, after that moment, that truly was his sign to tell his mom, I want to do movies. So he talks about how his first real movie, it was in 1981. It was called The Buddy System. And it was a movie with Susan Sarandon, Richard Dreyfuss, and it was a huge flop. And he talks about how when Siskel and Ebert are talking shit about a movie you were in, like, it fucks with you. And he talks about how, again, like that messes with your head, because a point that he makes is, I feel like people don't realize that, well, yes, they are giving a performance, like they're also giving up their childhood. They are giving up being a kid to be in the movie that you are reviewing. And then after that, his movie was the movie that, and then after that, the really big hit for him was Stand By Me. And he did that when he was 14, 15 years old, over a summer, I believe. And when you think about when you have the cast of those four boys, it's Wil Wheaton, River Phoenix, Corey Feldman, and Jerry O'Connell. My thinking in my head is that must have been a fun summer. That must have been a great summer. But he talks about, though, when he got on Star Trek, it's well known, he's Wesley Crusher on Star Trek The Next Generation. People were very hateful towards his character. Because I've never seen Star Trek The Next Generation, I don't think. I'm sure I've seen a clip here and there, but I've never really watched it. And there's a clip where it's in the doc where it's Picard telling him, "Shut up, Wesley." And I guess there are a side dedicated to him where it's just called "Shut Up, Wesley." and there were all these fan sites dedicated to him. Basically, Wesley Crusher was the little Anakin Skywalker of the late 80s, early 90s, if that makes sense. Oh, excuse me. And in addition, he talks about how, I believe it was right after Stand By Me. Yeah, it was right after Stand By Me that his parents he put him in a shitty horror movie called The Curse that he hated doing. And I don't know if he still has a relationship with his parents. I really don't. And again, I'm just saying I just don't know. But he talks about how nowadays he loves his life. He has a great life. He has a great family. He likes doing the stuff that he's doing now. He creates stuff. I know him as a very well-known narrator on some audiobooks. I know he did the narration for Ready Player One on Audible. Or actually, rather, just the audiobook in general. And I'm sure one of the highlights of his career, especially in the last 10 years, was how through seasons 3 through 12, he was himself on The Big Bang Theory. He did that for 17 episodes. That must have been a fun gig to come in like probably once or twice a season and just play a douchey version of himself. One that I latched on to also was the actress Evan Rachel Wood. Now, many know her from, especially nowadays, from Westworld. But the first thing I saw her in, and again, I didn't see this movie until I was 10, I would say. But she was in a movie called Little Secrets, right? So this came out around 2001, 2002, because it was on that movie trailer was the first trailer you saw on the Stuart Little 2 VHS. Because I watched that movie over and over and over again, I saw her face over and over and over again. And I, in a way, like through elementary school, I kind of was in love with her through that. And again, I mean that in like a very innocent, childlike way. So I see Little Secrets and I thought, oh wow, it's amazing. And then I think a year or two later, I saw her first really mature role in the movie 13. I'm sure many of you know what that movie is. It came out in, I believe, 2003? Let me see if this is correct here. Yep, 2003. And it's one of the most fucked up coming-of-age stories ever put to screen. But it was a tiny movie. Nikki Reed co-wrote the screenplay. Holly Hunter was in it, and it was a very small movie, but it was starting to pick up notoriety because of just the fact that it's about girls turning 13 and just all the serious stuff they get into, and it's the rebellion and self-harm and all this stuff. And it kind of that was like my first real realization that with age comes more mature roles. Another one is the actress Milla Jovovich. Many know her from the Resident Evil franchise, or Dazed and Confused, or The Fifth Element. I hadn't realized how long she had been working, and she talks about how she hated every second of acting when she was a kid. She hated it. And she talks about, and Evan Rachel Wood talks about this too, they just felt so uncomfortable because you know how like when you're a kid, when child actors they're featured in some sort of photo shoot where they're wearing some sort of dress, actresses are wearing some sort of a dress and a skirt and you know maybe like heels or something. They talk about how like they didn't want to do that, you know. And again, I don't know word for word, but basically their generalization was like they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to wear a t-shirt and jeans and sneakers basically. And because they were well-known actresses, I felt like maybe that was part of the job, was doing these photo shoots. It just made me feel horrible for them. Another one is Mara Wilson. Some of you may be wondering, who is that? Well, Mrs. Doubtfire. She was the little girl in Mrs. Doubtfire. She was in Miracle on 34th Street, the remake in '94, and of course she is famously Matilda. And she talks about how she never really acted before, and she books Mrs. Doubtfire, and Mrs. Doubtfire is a massive hit, and she became so popular. And I remember seeing in the doc, it shows this interview where I think they're in a trailer or something, and it's a guy with a microphone saying, "I'm here with little Mara Wilson, blah 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 blah," and I just thought that must be really fucking weird. Like, it just feels so. It must have been so fucking weird to be interviewed by some random person when you're like 5 years old. Because like that's the thing, and again, like I know I'll have to do press, and I'll always hate it. Of course, if I ever go on Conan or Seth Meyers or Kimmel or whatever, that's awesome. But just the interview process of being in a hotel room at like the Holiday Inn or the Four Seasons or the Hilton or something, and you're just being interviewed and asked the same 5 questions like 100 times throughout like a 12-hour day, I would hate it. I'll hate every minute of it. Of course, there were some journalists that I'll love to talk to, but just generally, I would just hate it. I can only imagine if I had to do that when I was like 6. Because watching this doc, it made me think, like, what if I was on a Disney Channel or a Nickelodeon show? What if I was on a sitcom that ran for a decade? What if I was in a movie that was such a smash hit? That was a juggernaut of a movie. And by the way, we'll get to that in a second with Henry Thomas. It just puts myself in perspective. And then of course, and then she talks about how during Matilda, her mother died during post-production, and Danny DeVito said he was able to show her a cut of the movie before she passed away. Sorry. Crushed ice. But anyway, so then she, like, as, after that, she started to get older, and she talks about how she wasn't really a cute teenager. And what I mean by that is, like, it's just, because again, like, she didn't look like one of those teenagers that you would see in some sort of, get up on a Pop Tiger magazine or something. She just wasn't one of those kids. And her last movie was Thomas and the Magical Railroad. I remember this movie very vividly. I rented it from the video store. I got it in my Easter basket when I'm like 5 years old, I think. But anyway, that was her last movie, and after that, she was just like, "I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore." And she talks about how, going forward, she may want to work behind the camera, maybe write some stuff, but she'll never want to be in front of it again. Next one I'll talk about is Henry Thomas. Eliot from E.T. He was 10 years old. 10 years old when he auditioned for that movie. He had only done one movie prior to that, and I've seen the audition 4 or 5 times, right? The audition video was like a minute long. He says 3 lines, and it's I don't think they actually say that in the movie, but it's like mock dialogue of they're gonna threaten to take the alien away, and he's like, "No, you can't take him." He says 3 lines, and his face is crying. Or not his face is crying, but he's crying. And then Spielberg goes, "All right, kid, you got the job." Then they go shoot the movie, and he says that the first thing Drew Barrymore ever said to him was, "How many movies have you done?" And he goes, "1," because the E.T. was his second movie that he ever did. And Drew Barrymore goes, "Oh, you poor thing. I've already done 4. And that's crazy to hear a 6-year-old say that. 6 or 7-year-old, I think. Because I forget if she's born in 74 or 75. So anyway, the movie comes out. Again, I wasn't alive for this, but I am guessing from record, just from research about this movie that I've done since I was a little kid. E.T. was the biggest movie. Obviously the biggest movie of 1982, but at the time it was the biggest movie ever made. I mean, Spielberg was known for Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and now this. And the fact that He had Raiders of the Lost Ark come out the year prior, and then the next summer was E.T. It was summer, right? Let's check here. Wikipedia. Yep, June 11th, 1982, and it made $792.9 million worldwide. That is fucking insane. So anyway, the movie comes out, and of course it's E.T. And in a way now, like, he couldn't really be a kid anymore. Like, he was now, wherever he would go, they would be like, "Oh my God, it's Elliot from E.T." Everybody would ask him to sign something, or obviously I don't think, because again, this is '82, so I don't think taking a picture was possible. But like autographs, talk to him or something. And he walked in, shows footage of him walking into a store, and again, like, imagine being 11 years old and you have your face on action figures, I'm sure comic books, shirts, toys, board games, etc., etc., etc. Your face is everywhere. Your face is on billboards, etc., etc., etc. And apparently, he said on a talk show, because they show this, some kids call him names. Some kids call him, like, E.T. or Alien Boy or something like that. And in my head, I was like, why the fuck do you tease Elliot for? Elliot was the shit. And then and I'm sure some of the kids who teased him, because I guess he was living in Burbank, maybe, I forget. But one of the things probably was because I'm sure every kid in Los Angeles was going in for that role, and somebody who had only done one movie before them, and I'm sure maybe some kids had done years and years and years of acting under their belts, and they go in and they didn't get the part, and this one kid who has only done one movie in their life gets it. They're probably mad. And then something he talks about, though, is the older he got, so like when he's 16 and he's going in for auditions, right? He goes in for auditions, and while he may be 16 years old, they still see him as 11. Because again, like, he has this iconic role at 11 years old where he's Elliot, and again, like he's not Elliot. His name is Henry Thomas. He's a human being, but he also talks about how his mom, I guess, kind of resented him over the years later on, because again, like all those years she had to be around, because child actors, they can't be left alone. Legally, a parent has to be on set with them, and it usually was his mom that had to go. And from what I understand, she kind of resented him for all the years of having to follow him around and be with him all the time. And he doesn't live in Hollywood anymore, and he hopes his kids never go into it. Another actress is Jada Pinkett Smith. Now, Jada Pinkett Smith, she's from Baltimore. She went to performing arts school with Tupac Shakur. And I know that she did Menace to Society, but I don't know what age she did that. Yeah, her first movie is Menace to Society, and it came out in 93, and she was born in 71, so I'm guessing she did that when she was 21 years old. And she was on the last couple of years of, A Different World, which was the Doogie Howser, or not the Doogie Howser, the Bill Cosby Show, the Cosby Show spinoff. So I'm sure that, she talks about specifically when she, when she and Will have the moments where they become diva-ish, they catch themselves and bring themselves back down. And they talk about what it's like raising. She talks about what it's like to raise kids, Jaden and Willow, in this life, and how they have to be on social media and all this shit. And again, it just feels fucking weird. It must have been. And again, I don't know what it's like, because I'm sure let's say if I was 5 years old and I'm an actor now, I would have to be on social media all the time. And then again, this is if I got into the business, I probably would have had to start doing a MySpace page and all this shit. And another actress, another actor is Todd Bridges. For those who don't know, Todd Bridges was Willis in Different Strokes. he did his different strokes from 78 through 86, so 13 to 20, 21. And he talks about how, because he talks about how, it shows up an interview where he reveals like he was sexually abused by, I believe it was, I forget if it was his manager or an acting coach. I forget who, but he was sexually abused when he was 12 years old. And I think he was saying how on the lines of doing that was preparing him or something like that. I don't know. I forget the specifics. But one thing that stuck out was how he would, he talks about how great the schedule was. When you go to school for 4 hours and you go shoot a sitcom for 4 hours. But one thing though was how his money, I guess, was starting to go away. But I forget how but basically, I guess his dad knew this was happening, but he didn't tell him for 3 years. And by the time he had told him, all of his money was gone. And that's horrible. And there's an actress who was known in the 1920s as Baby Peggy. I was talking about her last night. What the hell was her name again? Diana Sarah Carey. DianaSerracary. She was born in 1918, right? And she started acting when she was 2, so 1920. She passed away in February of this year at the age of 101 years old. And basically, she was so well known because she was kind of known as the $1 million baby, because the $1 million kid or whatever, because whatever movie she was in, and again, this is 1920s, whatever movie she was in, it made $1 million, which is a big deal in the 1920s. And apparently, because her dad wasn't getting access to her money, he kind of destroyed her contracts, and basically she was taken out of the business at 7. And another actor is, of course, the late great Cameron Boyce, who was Sandler's kid in Grown Ups 1 and 2. He was in Jesse. He was also one of his last projects, if not I think his last, was the HBO miniseries Mrs. Fletcher. And one of the things he talks about though is that transition, right? That transition from being on Disney Channel and trying to be a good example to now going on to more mature work. Because for those that don't know, I mean, like, Mrs. Fletcher is really about a woman in her 40s discovering pornography and rediscovering her sexuality and her sexual drive. And that's a very mature show, like when you go, and then after you're on Disney Channel as this character for, 5 seasons, I think. Sorry, motorcycle driving by. So anyway, like I think he said he booked Jesse when he was, I think, 10 or 11, and that show went on until I think 2014, 2015. And he made a couple guest appearances on the show, on the spinoff, and he also had his show in Disney XD. I think that got canceled after a year or two. But anyway, he was involved with Disney, and of course also Descendants. He was with Disney for a good, almost 10 years. And he's trying to provide a good example. And I always heard he was so professional, he was so nice. And he talks about how, in a way, one thing that he talks about that hit to me was also people trying to be his friend. Like, he asked the question of, do you actually want to be my friend, or you just want to be my friend because I'm famous? And asking for favors. And I had something similar to this a few years back where I thought I was like going in for something big. Turns out it was just a student project. And anyway, I say this, and then a coworker of mine goes, "Can you throw some of that work my way?" And in my head, I'm like, "No, fuck off." And it kind of just shows, like, in many ways, and again, this like my experience was I was just going in for like a tiny little. I thought it was gonna be a big thing. Turns out it was just a very tiny little student thing, so that doesn't really count. But like, again, I can only imagine, when you're very successful when you were a kid, and people your age are saying they want to be your friend, or if they can ask, or they're saying, hey, can you help me? Can you maybe get me an audition or a role? That must do something to your head a little bit, because it makes you wonder, like, do people like me for me, or do they just like me because I'm on TV? Yeah, so let's go to this kid named Marc Slater. I think he's 8 years old, right? And he comes from Florida. He's shooting on the documentary. He's in his second year of pilot season. Last year, he didn't get a damn thing. His mom has an Instagram for him where he's taking pictures outside of places that he auditioned, blah, 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 blah. While she maybe seems well, she definitely is a fucking stage mom. She just is. And at the end of the documentary, it's revealed that he doesn't get anything the second year in a row. And they say at the end, we're going to go back again for another year. In my head, I'm just, don't. Just no. If you've gone 2 straight years and you didn't get anything, I say just stop now. And I've talked about though how he's in an acting coach session, and he's not really taking it seriously, because again, like, acting is a legit craft. It's a craft. You have to really know what the fuck you're doing. You have to take every minute of it, rather every waking second of it, seriously. And he says, hey, I want to do it, but in the back of my head, I could just tell, like, judging by how, like, when the lady's talking to him, saying, hey, you should talk to your parents and say, if you don't want to do this, talk to your parents and say, hey, this is not my cup of tea. His leg is really shaking, and his hand is fiddling on his leg. In my head, I'm just like, he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't. And at the end of the doc, Gary Coleman, who was, on Different Strokes with Todd Bridges, he talks about how if he could go back, he would tell himself, be a kid. And while he's talking about this, it shows Marc Slater back in Florida, hanging in his room with his friends, playing with toys, and, jumping in the pool, having fun. And in my head, I'm just thinking, this is what this fucking kid should be doing. Just be a kid. Because there are 2 types of actors. Because I watched the documentary, like if I was 8 or 9 years old and I was shown this documentary, I would still want to go into business. But that shows I truly want to do this. Whereas some actors just go in because of their parents. And while it's not, I don't think they say anything, I do feel like this is one of those examples, because it just seems like the parents are trying to hone in on the success when the kid eventually gets it. And then I forget the name of this girl, but she's in New York, and she's a theater actress, and her whole plot is, like I said, do I may have a chance to go to sleepaway camp, and hopefully, I get to do that, and as long as I get the summer off. Well, as expected, she doesn't have it off. She had to go audition for a few things. And I'll say this. While that's heartbreaking, but it sucks. But at the same time, that's the cost of being a child actor. It's something that I feel like people don't realize. Some may get lucky enough, because from what I understand, Jacob Tremblay actually goes to a public school in Toronto, I believe. Many kids actually go to school, and because I think the kid is 19 now, but the kid on the Goldbergs, Sean Gambron, I believe his name is, he plays Adam on the Goldbergs. Conan talks about, when he was on Conan, he said about how he shoots the show, but he still goes to his old school in Chicago when he's not filming. And I think that's great. That really is great, because when you're in this lifestyle where you're on set for, I think, 8-10 hours a day, depending on what state you're in, I'm think if there is some way to be a kid, to have some sort of normalcy, have it. Because Todd Bridges talks about how he's grateful that his mom let him play, Pee Wee, baseball, Pop Warner football. Like, he was able to do some normal things despite being on a hit sitcom. And it goes into the other actor or the other actress on Different Strokes. I forget what her name is, but she had a history of drug problems, and there was a period where she was just getting into constant trouble, and she was falling off the wagon, and she was on Stern in '99, and she was saying, "Oh, I'm getting my shit together. I'm fine. I haven't done anything. Blah 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 blah." The next day, she passed away from intoxication from, I think, drugs or alcohol. And another person Wil Wheaton touches on is River Phoenix, the late great River Phoenix. River Phoenix truly, despite dying at a very young age of, I believe, 23 years old, he really is one of the greatest actors to ever live on this planet. He really was a reincarnated James Dean. Not just because, James Dean, because I think River Phoenix did more than 3 movies, but River Phoenix, similar to James Dean, he has a presence on screen. Whether it's Stand By Me, or Explorers, or it's his Oscar-nominated role Running on Empty, or even the Young Indiana Jones, whatever role he has in a movie, if it's tiny or if it's big, you cannot help it but not take your eyes off him. You cannot focus on anything else when he's on screen, because he draws you in through how he carries himself in posture, how he talks in his voice, what he does with his eyes. Because one important thing is, when you're an actor, if you're lucky, you have very expressive eyes. One specific thing is Sylvester Stallone in Copland. While he doesn't show a whole lot of emotion, his emotion in his eyes says it all. Sorry. And it makes you think about these actors, and you just feel horrible. Because obviously, like they say, the positives are, they're very successful now. Some of them have lived this really great life. But, a lot of them say, if I could, I wouldn't do it. I would just be a normal kid. And then, Evan Rachel Wood talks about how, if she was feeling depressed and didn't want to go do a job, she couldn't really tell her parents that. She couldn't tell her family that, because she knew that she said they would probably react like, why are you acting like this? We've sacrificed everything for you to do your fucking work. Now, I don't think those are the exact words that Evan Rachel Wood said, but it was along the lines of, if she fears that if she had complained, her family would just say, "Why are you complaining? You're doing what you want to be doing, and we have dropped everything for you." And Cameron Boyce talked about that. How his mom pulled him out of school 2 hours early. His little sister was, I think it was either his little sister or his older sister. His sister was only known as the fact that she was Cameron Boyce's sister. She couldn't be herself, because people only saw her as this kid on TV's sibling. And that kind of made him feel really bad. And it makes me kind of think about going. Oh, and also, another thing is Jackie Coogan. I think I talked about this. But he's Uncle Fester in the old Addams Family sitcom. But he was also a really famous child star when he was a little kid, and I remember him most from Charlie Chaplin's movie The Kid. It's only I think it's either 15 minutes or an hour. But basically, he had accumulated a $4 million fortune from all the work he did when he was a child. And because he wasn't able to get it from his parents, because of some legal shit, I think, he died broke. And it makes me think about some child actors who were not in the doc, and I wonder if they were asked. There's an actress by the name of Angela Watson. She played Karen on Step by Step. And I according to Wikipedia page, I looked this up 4 or 5 years ago, I believe, because that's when I started really watching the show. At the end of Step by Step's run, the show went 7 seasons. apparently, because she turned 18, she was able to get her. She went to get her money, and she found out that her parents had spent a 7 years on a sitcom worth amount of dough, which was worth upwards of $1 million. Her earnings from 7 years on a sitcom, her parents spent it. Her parents burned through all of it. That is fucking horrible. And I wonder if Macaulay Culkin was asked. I wonder if Frankie Muniz was asked, because Frankie Muniz, on an interview with Katie Couric, he said his mom was not prepared for how famous he got. Because once he got Malcolm in the Middle, she had to start homeschooling him. She wasn't ready to homeschool him. And my mom says, I didn't put you in that business because A, I don't want you to get sexually abused. B, I don't want you to get hooked on drugs. But also another thing is just, she was working at the time. And I know my dad definitely wouldn't have been the parent to be on set all the time, to take me to audition after audition after audition. It would have had to have been my mom, and my mom was working at the time, and she couldn't just drop everything she was doing. I also feel like my dad, if I had done it and if I had become a success, I feel like my dad would have hated me, because in a hypothetical world, I would have made more money by the time I was 15 than he would have ever made in a single lifetime. And also, like, my dad never really liked some of the same shit that I liked. Like, his whole thing was, if you didn't like what he liked, he wouldn't like what you liked. Which is why his forcing me to ride a motorcycle, a dirt bike around in the back all the time, is the reason why I don't like motorcycles anymore. It's the reason why I haven't been on one in almost a decade. And and I knew one time he actually made fun of my desire to go to LA. He made fun of me for it. He made fun of me how my idea was move to Los Angeles after I turned 18. And he made fun of me. And if he had been the parent that had to go with me, it straight up would have been like Shia LaBeouf in Honey Boy. Because Honey Boy, if you've ever seen it, it's on Amazon. It's an amazing movie. It's an Amazon original. It's autobiographical on Shia LaBeouf's life. He and his dad were very hostile. It was a hostile relationship. His father was both verbally and physically abusive towards him, and his father was a rodeo clown. And he would run in the movie. It shows him running through the dialogue and running through the scene, and taking the craft seriously, but at the same time, he was very hostile towards his son. And me and my dad weren't great. It's obvious. I talked about it. It wasn't great the last 3 to 5 years of his life. But I do feel like if I had gone into the business, he would have fucking hated my guts, because I know I would have made more money than he did by the time I was starting high school. And it just makes you think, man. If parents, if you have a kid and you're in the business, if they don't like it, take them out. Just take them out. Just let them quit. Be a kid. And also the weird thing is just sending your profile pic. Sending your headshot out, because you have to print so many copies of them. There's this video where it shows Henry Thomas's headshot being printed by the thousands. Because again, after you're in the biggest movie of all time, everybody wants to work with you, and he made a bunch of movies afterwards, like Cloak and Dagger and a handful of and some other ones, but again, none of them recouped the same success as E.T. the Extraterrestrial. I will say, whether it's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, whether it's Poltergeist, or Jurassic Park, or Empire of the Sun, Steven Spielberg probably is the best casting person for children. He picks just the right people at the right time. And from what I understand, he truly is very nice man. Lena Waithe described him best as, he's a giant that doesn't make people feel small. And there is it shows some footage where he shows Spielberg directing Henry Thomas and all the other kids, and it shows behind the scenes footage, and it's really fucking cool. And I think that's gonna wrap up this episode, and just me talking about Showbiz Kids. And like I said, it's on HBO. It's an HBO documentary. It's 95 minutes. It's very much worth a watch. It's the best documentary. It's one of the few documentaries I've seen in a while. It's the best documentary I've seen in a long time. 10 out of 10. It's a great documentary. It'll probably be on my top 10 of the year. All right, guys. This has been Dealing With Yourself, Episode 8. This is your host, Danny Till, DANNYT, silent HILL. All right, guys. Have a good rest of your night. Bye-bye.